Hello and welcome back to a new episode of Everything Phil Collins. I'm Scott. Today we're talking about the brand new release, Turn It On Again, the hits from Genesis on vinyl. I have it on cassette. I just got that recently. I had to look really hard for it. It's downstairs. Why didn't I bring it up for this filming? I don't know. And of course I have it on CD. Now, the thing I want to get out of the way right away, because the comment section on Facebook and Reddit and everywhere is just like lighting up about why do we need this, blah, blah, blah. We're going to dive into all of that. I want to talk about this really quickly about how meaningful this record or this CD was to me back in 1999. I was in high school at the time. I had grown up with Phil Collins, No Jacket Required, and But Seriously, and Buster, and a little bit of Genesis too, Invisible Touch, and a little bit of Mama. But I wasn't like really deep into Genesis. And I also was moving away. I've talked about this before. I was moving away from Phil Collins because I was in high school and it wasn't cool to like Phil Collins or Genesis. People were listening to Eminem and all of that like grungy garage stuff like Nirvana, and then eventually far worse bands like Nickelback and Creed. Also, towards the end of high school, I had a little bit of money from working. And I remember being in a record store and seeing Genesis Greatest Hits. I think I had started to warm a little bit back to Phil Collins because of Tarzan. And I talked about how some of my friends in high school were listening to Tarzan, and it kind of started to win people back over with Phil. And I really enjoyed Tarzan, and it kind of got me back on the train. And I remember picking up some of the old CDs that I had lost along the way, or maybe never had on CD, had only had on cassette. And so when I saw this come out in 1999 in November, I think it was maybe just after Christmas, I had finally picked it up in the year 2000. I completely reignited my love for Genesis. Around this time too, I also got Shaking the Tree from Peter Gabriel. And I just realized like what depth of songwriting and beautiful melodies that Genesis has. Now, this is all before I got really deep into the way early stuff, but this album of hits holds a really special place in my heart. And you might be surprised to know this, but I keep the CD in the car all the time. And before my car stereo broke, I would listen to the CD all the time. I would always listen to it. I just love like randomly hearing their best songs or their most popular songs. Anyway, you always read online about how some people first heard about Genesis through the Shapes album, or some people first heard about Genesis through Genesis to Revelation, or they first heard about Phil Collins through Both Sides, and that's the only album that they know. Everybody has their own entry point, their own unique path to falling in love with Phil and this band. And for me, for Genesis, it's Turn It On Again, the hits. And that's why I'm so thrilled that they released it on vinyl. I have the clear issue here. They also did it on black vinyl. I'm going to show you some B-roll. This artwork is really cool, which we'll talk about. I still have it somewhat in the cellophane. I ordered the clear from Amazon in America. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about the packaging. We're going to talk about why does this exist? Why do we need this? We're going to talk about some of the history of this album. And maybe we'll get a chance to talk about what we think they could do in the future, what people like Concord, this Craft Recordings company, and Rhino can do with their future catalog. Now, I was really shocked that they would release this on vinyl. This is something I really, really love. And like I said, it's nostalgic to me, this greatest hits package. But I wasn't sure if they would do it or if they would do a new package. I knew it was inevitable that they would release a greatest hits of Genesis. Once the catalog was sold, I knew it was inevitable that they would release a greatest hits on vinyl. See, I love vinyl. That's why this package is this was probably the most exciting vinyl announcement I've seen in years, because this greatest hits album is so nostalgic for me. I listen to it still all the time, 30 odd years, 25 odd years later. But I also primarily listen to vinyl. 85% of the music I listen to is on my home stereo on vinyl. And so I was really glad to have this in my collection. And half of my collection is Phil and Genesis. So I always like to add more to that. But aside from me, the fact of the matter is that they actually needed to release a Genesis greatest hits on vinyl. See, vinyl sales are at an almost all-time high. In fact, I think they've matched in the UK, I think they've matched like a 40-year 30 or 40 year sales record, and there seems to be no ceiling. Now, if you adjust for Taylor inflation, I'm not sure. I think one in every 4 records is a Taylor Swift record, but that's okay. Those people will continue to get more into vinyl and will eventually start buying Phil Collins records as well. I talk to record labels, manufacturing plants, and record labels every day. It's part of my job. And we have yet to see a ceiling in the sales of vinyl. It's just continuing to grow. People are loving buying big records. I think it's in a response to the impersonal nature of your digital streaming music collection. And so for that reason, people are buying records all the time. But we didn't have a Genesis Greatest Hits album on vinyl. And this is one of the reasons why as soon as the Concorde was sold, I knew it was going to happen. Now, I thought it was going to happen more in the sense of the Phil Collins singles box set, or that they did a box set and then they kind of trimmed it down to just the big hits on like a double disc that they released around the time of his book, I think maybe 5 years ago or so. So I thought they would do something brand new. But when you think about it, this box set or this Greatest Hits album, the artwork is fantastic. It is truly their hits with a few minor exceptions. And unlike the Phil Collins box set, there's really nothing that's changed from when this was released. So if you go back to maybe 98 or so, whenever Phil Collins released the Hits album, they needed to do a new album around the time of his book, a new Greatest Hits, because there had been some new hits like Can't Stop Loving You, You'll Be in My Heart, the Brother Bear stuff. Whereas with Genesis, there hasn't been any new releases, Teardrop, since 1999. So it made sense to just repackage this and to redo it. It was already done. Everything seemed to make sense. There was nothing that really stood out, with the exception of maybe Congo, but I really like that song. Again, nostalgia. I think the artwork of this package is really great. It reminds me a lot of the 1998 Hits package from Phil Collins. I think it's 98, forgive me, where there's all the paintings of the album covers. I love it when bands do that, like, marry all of the album covers over the years. It looks cool. This is a super minimal and clean design. There's actually, let's talk about the artwork now for a second, and we'll talk about the vinyl too. There's actually there's some problematic natures to this. Even though I love the album cover and how minimal it is, we do have like a Calling All Stations. It makes up one of the letters. We also don't have any representation anywhere from a handful of the records, even albums that have songs on them. So there's no Abacab here. So this looks like they're showing all of the album covers, but there's no Abacab, and there's actually a song from Abacab on this album. There's also, now maybe that's like Bill Smith wouldn't allow them to use it. I don't know. That doesn't seem likely. Now, mostly they are showing albums that have songs on this compilation, like And Then There Were Three and Selling England by the Pound, and The Lamb has a song on here, even though it's a remix or a new version. But like I said, we don't have Abacab. We don't have Trick of the Tail, even though there's no Trick of the Tail songs on here. Why wouldn't they have just shown all of the album covers over the years, like Trick and Wind, even though they don't have a song on here? I don't know. I don't really know the logic, but either way, it's really beautiful. Look at this hype sticker. That's really nice. This is the clear vinyl version. I think it's called Invisible Touch. Let's take a look at the record. I like clear. Clear seems to be my new favorite color lately. I was going to get whatever came quickest so that I could do this review as fast as possible. I would have been happy with black, but clear is kind of nice. And I'm glad they did, something special. I think this will be a perennial seller. I think it'll sell all the time. I think they'll be making copies forever. The clear is probably will be limited. I think they'll go back to just making black forever. I mean, Greatest Hits sells on records. Why? Because when people start a record collection, if you're starting a record collection, it's incredibly expensive and daunting to say, get every single classic album of the past 30, 40, 50 years, considering they're still making new records every day. So instead of doing that, and even the old records that are really popular are kind of getting expensive used, and they're not easily found at yard sales as they used to be. And so if you want to have like a sophisticated record collection, you'd be $5,000 to $10,000 in buying all the greatest records of all time. And so instead, people are kind of gravitating more to, the greatest hits like we did in the late 90s on CDs. In fact, when this album was announced, and a lot of fans were kind of upset that there was nothing new, nothing exciting, there was one guy on Reddit, I believe, or in a Facebook group, forgive me, I don't know his name, who owns a record store and said that the Phil Collins Greatest Hits album sells all the time. And so he'll be able to sell this constantly nonstop. And so he, as a record store owner, was thrilled because now somebody coming into the store will think, do I get Selling England for $50 in clear vinyl? Do I get The Lamb? Well, you know what? Maybe I'll just get this Greatest Hits package and get a little bit of everything. Now, I know some of you diehard fans are like, that's blasphemy. It's the truth. It's just how people like to buy records now. And we hope that they buy this record and they hear a song like I Know What I Like or Carpet Crawlers, and they dive a little bit deeper. and then they buy some of the albums, whether they buy them used or they buy them new, and they get into the full catalog. So that's kind of the purpose of this. And when you are Concord and you're trying to basically make as much money as possible and to keep a catalog alive, doing a greatest hits package basically tells new fans who were negative 30 years old whenever this album came out. Let's go back in time. This came out October 25th, 1999. Sorry, I thought it was November. They released a single from it. It was the Carpet Crawlers version, 1999, which is fantastic. I mean, we all love that song. So many people talk about it all the time. According to Dave Kersner, they lost the mix files. So I don't think they'll ever be able to kind of remix it or to mix it into Dolby Atmos, which is too bad. Apparently, there wasn't much like collaboration that happened. I've always been curious about what type of work Tony and Mike did on this record. Like, how involved was Tony? Did Tony kind of produce this song, the 1999 Carpet Crawlers, and then kind of like outsource the drumming to Phil in his own studio and the background vocals? Did Phil do the drumming? Like, I know there's a lot of drum machines happening. I know that Peter and Phil were never together to record this. Anyway, we all love this tune. It's a great, great, great tune. Not a huge single. I couldn't imagine this charting in the late 90s. I know there's tour editions. 8 years later, when they went on tour, they kind of did an expanded version of this on CD. I don't think we'll see that on vinyl. I did want to highlight this album as compared to The Last Domino, because some of you might be saying, well, hold on, Scott, we do actually have a greatest hits, quote unquote, on vinyl that came out when they went on tour, The Last Domino. I think that as much as I love the band, as much as I love vinyl, as much as I own that record, and I do occasionally listen to it because I like greatest hits albums. I do like listening to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, segueing into In Too Deep. That's me. I'm weird. Who cares? As much as I love all those things, I think The Last Domino record project was one of the most asinine projects they've ever done. It just does not make sense in any way. They take the album songs, play them in sort of the order that they played them live in lieu of doing a live album. Oh man, I really don't know what they were thinking. I've said all along, the best option for that, and even a better version of the BBC version, would have been to take The Last Domino in the track order, doing 4 discs or whatever it is. I think it's 4 discs. But instead of each song used from the album, take each song used from a live recording throughout their entire career. So you take Land of Confusion from maybe 1992. You take No Son of Mine from maybe 2007. You take Turn It On Again from maybe 1981 tour. Anyway, you get the point. So I wasn't crazy about that. I just did not think it made any sense. The box is cool. The logo is so-so. It was just a wonder to me why they didn't just box up Turn It On Again at the time, maybe even the tour edition. Why didn't they just do that on their own before Concord? So the other question is, are we going to see more of these compilation releases? As the sales for vinyl continue to go, we are going to see more and more absurd things. And so a lot of you are saying, why are we doing this? Why did you buy this, Scott? Well, first of all, I'm a diehard Genesis fan and diehard vinyl collector, and I do love this record. So I don't buy everything. I couldn't afford a lot of those 75th anniversary Atlantic editions. Unfortunately, I would have loved to have grabbed those, but they were just insane in price by the time they got to Canada. But because the demand for vinyl has not slowed down, the question becomes, how much do they milk the back catalog? And maybe they milk it to the tune of $30 million or whatever they paid for it. I mean, back in the CD days, it was common to see things like the Phil Collins Love Song compilation, where you had just his love songs. And so will we see a greatest hits compilation of the Peter Gabriel era on vinyl? Will we see a best of the instrumentals of Genesis released? To me, I don't see a problem with doing that. I certainly don't see a problem with them releasing digital versions. A lot of you guys are go, well, why do I need to own that? Aside from 1999 Carpet Crawlers, that's never been on vinyl before. Otherwise, all of this, we all have multiple different copies throughout the years, remastered, the original mixes, whatever. I get it. And I think it's about collecting. I think for a lot of people, they just like to collect vinyl. They like to have different types of records in their collection. There might be a lot of vinyl record collectors out there who only do greatest hits, or they only do soundtracks or compilations, that they don't have room in their collection to have all 15 or 20 of Genesis' other records. Different strokes for different folks. You got to keep that in mind. It may not make sense for you. I think the fans of Genesis have always wanted something a lot more unique and bespoke. The BBC box set came sort of close. I think fans were even critical of that. I don't know what they could do. I mean, I don't know. We are starting to see some sort of bootlegs of complete live shows that are happening from other record labels. We don't really know the legalities of that, but that's been interesting to watch. Those have been records I've been excited to see, and I've done some reviews on the channel. I think the artwork is great on this. I think the packaging is great on this. I think I'm excited to know that there's young people who are going to be checking out Genesis for the very first time and might see this in Target or their local record store and say, oh, I've heard about that band. My dad listened to that band. I'm going to check them out. And I'm really glad they made this record. And, listen, they can make whatever they want. I don't have to buy everything. You don't have to buy everything. You don't have to smash everything on Facebook if you don't like it. But I just think it's interesting. Now, let's talk about Peter for a second. I think they're maybe due for another Peter Gabriel greatest hits on vinyl. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how that would work. He's got a lot of stuff. I love Shaking the Tree, but, it's missing some of the stuff after So it doesn't make sense for them to repress that. I was never crazy about the Phil Collins greatest hits. That box set was just hard to use because you had to lift the lid. And then the other one, I wasn't crazy about the artwork. But whatever, maybe some sort of other compilation from Phil, maybe a single disc. I don't know. Could they do a compilation of Mike and the Mechanics? I think that would be kind of cool. I think we should see that pretty soon, maybe when they go on tour. I know they did like kind of a remix version of their hits, but I mean, they've got enough hits for a single disc greatest hits for sure. In the old days, people used to say that you had to record a song, a brand new song that fans have never heard, or a remix song like the Carpet Crawlers 1999 in order to sell the greatest hits on CDs. And so anytime a band would do a greatest hits CD, they would include a new song at the very beginning or at the end. U2 did it with that Mysterious Ways, which ended up becoming a hit in itself, which is really cool. Bands would always do that. That's not really the case anymore because this is just about people checking out the band for the very first time. So you don't need to necessarily have a brand new song to offer. So someone like Mike and the Mechanics could just do literally the hits and not have to shoehorn some sort of new song or new version of The Living Years or All I Need Is a Miracle. Anyway, my opinion. First of all, these releases give me content for this channel. So I'm game for them I'm game, just like the purpose of this channel. I'm game for them to keep the Genesis and Phil Collins energy and music and catalog alive until we're all dead. Did you pick up this record? Let me know what you think. First of all, let me know what you think in your memories of 25 years ago when this compilation came out. I'm curious what your memories and if any of you are nostalgic for this release as well. Did you pick up this vinyl? Did you get it on black or on clear? Maybe you have it on CD or cassette. I'd love to know. Leave a message in the comments. And a huge thank you to our Patreons for supporting this channel. Come on over there for some extra videos and bonus content. Thanks for watching.